Hey guys, and welcome back to Gwent, the Witcher card game. My name is Jaggerus, and last week I did a legendary crafting guide for you guys, and this week a lot of you asked for it, so we're going to be covering the epic cards crafting guide. And arguably, I would say that epic cards make more sense to craft as a new player than legendary cards, because you can get 4 epic cards for 1 legendary card. So in my personal opinion, and like when I started playing Gwent, I crafted a lot of epic cards before I crafted any legendaries, just because it does kind of help you to get the ball rolling. Anyway, without further ado, let's jump into it and I'll discuss which cards I think you should be crafting. So I'm actually going to be starting with a card that you shouldn't be crafting, despite the fact that Ciri is an excellent epic card. So Ciri is a 6 strength epic card, which returns to your hand if you lose the round. And she can kind of be played in a couple of versatile different ways. So the kind of main way people play her is you play her out on a round that you intend to lose. So, you know, if I'm quite far behind and I decide that I don't want to win this round, I might play Ciri out just to try and bait my opponent into playing more cards. Or maybe I play her early on a round that I intend to lose, and then just try and draw more cards out of my opponent and then pass and get her back, you know, giving yourself a card advantage. Alternatively, you could actually play her on a card you intend to win to try and encourage your opponent to pass, because often when your opponent sees you play Ciri and you're already ahead, they're likely to pass just because if they keep playing cards, they know that you're going to get card advantage if they do eventually manage to catch you up, so they often pass. But you get her for free when you hit account level 18. So she is not worth crafting. You may as well just level up your account, get to level 18. So if you see her in a pack, or if you see her, you think about crafting her, don't craft her. Just wait till level 18, you'll get her for free. So the neutral pool doesn't have many must-craft epic cards, but if you're going to craft 1 epic card when you start the game, Yennefer the Conjurer is 100% the one that you want to pick. She is a 4 strength golden card, so she can fit into any deck in a golden slot. She's neutral. And at the start of the turn, you remove 1 strength from the strongest opposing non-gold unit. But if that's tied, say there's 2 units that say have 7 strength and they're the strongest, she hits both of them. So if your opponent is running a deck with a lot of kind of similar health units, instead of 1 very buffed unit, you can get a huge amount of value from Yennefer. The other thing is often when other players see Yennefer, they typically don't let that round run long, because the longer the round runs, the more value your opponent's going to get out of Yennefer, and you know, the more damage she's going to be dealing. And she really is quite a kind of annoying card to play against, especially for new players, but she's also, you know, provides a lot of value other than her 4 base strength. And 100%, if you were going to craft 1 epic card at the start of your Gwent career, this is the one that I would craft. It fits into any deck, and it is just a lovely little card. It has some cool synergies, you know, with stuff like harm decks, if you're playing Skellige, for example. If you're playing Northern Realms, it's actually a 6 strength. There's lots of kind of little nuanced plays that you can use with Yennefer. Maybe, you know, in synergy with Igni, if you get a lot of units to the same strength, then you Igni the whole row, you kill all of them. There's lots of kind of great things you can do with her, in synergy with some other cards as well. But standalone, she is very, very strong. So the other neutral card that I want to mention, the other epic neutral card, is Vesemir, Eskel, and Lambert. Now, I wouldn't necessarily say it's worth, you know, straight up crafting the 3 of these right at the start. That's 600 scrap. You know, 600 scrap is a lot. There's a lot of different things you could do with that. But if you, say, find Eskel, or you find Vesemir, or even if you find Lambert, if you find, you know, maybe 1 of them or 2 of them in packs, crafting the other 2 actually becomes quite a viable early game strategy, because it gives you 3 silver cards, which can be used for deck thinning, and they get a lot of power on the board. For example, Vesemir, he has 7 strength. If we look at Eskel, he's got 5 strength, you see him there. And if we look at Lambert, he's also got 5 strength. So you're getting 17 strength on the board in one play. The thing to be aware of is to be careful during your mulligan that you don't, you know, end up with 2 of them in your hand. The idea is you play 1 and it pulls the other ones out of your deck. Dropping 17 points on the board is hard to catch up for. You know, you can't really easily get 17 points in 1 card. There's not very many ways that you can do that, but this is one of them. And it also has, you know, nice synergy in terms of thinning your deck to find other things. It's just kind of a nice early strategy. So I think if you do find a couple of them, then crafting, you know, the remaining 1 or 2 is definitely worth it as a new player, because again, it fits into any deck. Now, when I talk about each faction, I want to kind of touch on leaders if there's a certain leader that I think is very worthwhile to craft early on. So when it comes to monsters, you start with Eredin, but actually I think across the board, Dagon is just the best monster leader. In fact, possibly the best leader in the entire game, come to think about it. He does a lot. Basically, with Dagon, you spawn a Biting Frost, Impenetrable Fog, Torrential Rain, or First Light card. So you can basically choose which weather effect you want to craft, frost, fog, or rain. And if it happens to be the case where you don't want to cause weather to happen, then that's okay, because you get a first light, and a first light can either let you remove weather if weather's being a problem, say you're playing a consume deck, or it gives you a rally. Rally lets you then play a bronze card from your deck, the top bronze card. So it basically is a win-win situation, you know, and you see consume decks playing this leader, Dagon, not just weather decks. So it's nice in weather decks because you've got targeted weather, and then it's nice in consume decks because you can maybe weather a row that you're not stacking with your consume deck. So your opponent maybe is stacking the back row and you're stacking the front row, then, you know, you can just spawn a rain on them, debuff all of them, and you still got your strong melee units. Similarly, you know, if you're trying to find a very specific bronze card and you didn't get it in the mulligan, you've got that rally. Or if you happen to go up against weather, you've got a clear skies, and it's just a guaranteed card, and Dagon is just ridiculously good. So I think if you're a monsters player, I would 100% recommend crafting Dagon. So the next card I want to mention within the monsters are the crones. Crone Brewis, Crone Weavis, and Crone Whisperous, I believe they're called. Yeah, Wispus, Weavis, and Brewis. So you have 3 crones. There's an 8 strength 1 Brewis and 2 6s. So all in all, that is 20 points. And this is basically the monsters equivalent of Eskel, Vesemir, and Lambert. Except it's worth more points. It's actually worth 20 rather than 17. So it's a slightly better version. And I want to give you guys the same advice. If you are a monsters player and you happen to find 1 crone or maybe 2 crones in packs, then craft the rest. These cards themselves could just win a round for you, you know. It's 20 points from 1 card. You throw them down, your opponent's going to have a hard time to catch you up. If they do manage to catch you up, they often have to play more cards, giving you card advantage. This itself can be a round winner. And so if you're more of a monsters player rather than a broad player, I would recommend the crones over the witchers. Now, this one is for all you weather players. There's 2 epic cards I want to recommend here. One for weather players and one for consume players. If you are a weather player, if you're a weather monster player, Woodland Spirit is such a valuable card, you know? So he's an 8 strength card. He then spawns 3 Rabid Wolves. Rabid Wolves are 1 strength cards. So that puts him up to 11 points. So you got 11 points just in this 1 gold card. On top of that, you then spawn a fog effect. So you've got fog. That means if you're playing your ancient foglets, they're going to start getting buffed. But if you're also running your just regular foglets, that's another 6 points added to this. So that's 17 points plus fog for 1 card. And I just think if you're a weather player, having monsters that spawn weather effects rather than just weather effects themselves, it's just really valuable, because not only do you get the weather effect, you also get points on the board. And Woodland Spirit, I think, is a great card if you're going down the weather route. Now, if you're going down the consume route instead, can I introduce you to my friend Katakhan? Katakhan, I actually think, is probably a little bit too strong for an epic card, like, considering what Katakhan can do. So Katakhan banishes a non-gold unit in either graveyard and absorbs its strength. So you basically get to choose out of all the cards in the graveyard which one you want to absorb, and you gain those points. So if there's 1 card, you know, in the graveyard that has a lot of points, you can just absorb that one and you get a huge number of points on the board for a silver card, I might add. Often, you know, large points are kind of restricted to gold cards, but this is a silver card. So you get a large number of points. If they happen to have something problematic in their graveyard that you think they're going to resurrect, or that you're worried about them playing, you can absorb that and, you know, remove it from their graveyard. So it gets banished, which means they're not going to get it back. And lastly, you absorb the strength, which means if you're playing consume monsters, you'll trigger all of your absorb strength effects. So for example, if you have the Arrakis Behemoth, that will spawn a 3 strength Arrakis. If you have Nekkers, they will gain strength. So all of your kind of absorbing synergies then also get triggered by Katakhan. So not only do you remove a card, gain the points of that card, play out a unit, you also trigger all of the absorb effects. And I feel like if you're going to run consume, you should be running Katakhan. It's like a no-brainer. This card does a lot beyond its 4 base strength. So when it comes to Nilfgaard, I 100% think if you're going to be playing Nilfgaard, you need to have Morvran Vorhis. You just need to have him. Emir is nice and all, you know, with his 3 reveals. Emir is all right. Revealing 3 random cards is kind of nice. You do have some reveal synergies, but they're nowhere near as strong as the spying synergy. So then if you're playing a deck with lots of spies rather than lots of reveal, like, why are you running Emir van Emrys as a leader? Instead, what you can be running is run Morvran. Now, I will say some people argue for John Calviat, but I'll point out that often the spying units that you play aren't very strong, and you can use them for other sorts of synergies. If you see my Nilfgaard spy deck, then you'll understand. But basically, with Morvran, you look at the top 3 cards in your deck and play one. So you get to see 3 cards and you get to choose which one you get to play, which is just a really, really nice ability to have. You know, you can try and find the spies that you need. You can try and find gold cards that you need. It's just a kind of, the targeted draw effect is just a really strong effect. And it's not situational. You know, this effect, move all spying non-gold units to your side of the battlefield, relies on you having your spies out there and it being a situation where you've played a lot of spies. Similarly, if we look at Emir, you know, reveal 3 random cards in the opposing hand only really works when you have, say, mangonels on the board or you have some kind of reveal strategy, which ultimately I don't feel like is as strong as the spying strategy. Whereas Morvran, he lets you look at 3 cards in your deck and choose one. So he gives you deck thinning and he gives you choice, and it can work in literally any situation. Like, you can play this at any point throughout the game and it's going to be a good effect. And the other thing that makes Morvran, I think, the strongest Nilfgaardian leader will become clear when I show you guys my next epic card to craft. And that is Cahir. Cahir is a 10 strength gold card, so already you get 10 strength from him. But on top of that, if your opponent has not passed, it enables your leader ability for use, and your opponent draws the top bronze card in their deck and reveals it. So effectively with Cahir and Morvran, you play out Cahir, and then you get to use Morvran's ability a second time to further thin your deck. But bear in mind, you know, with Morvran's ability, it's a choice, and your opponent is getting a bronze card and they're showing it to you. Whereas with Morvran, you could find a silver card, you could find a gold card, or you could find a bronze card, and you can pick the one that you want to use situationally. On top of this, you're playing 10 points in Cahir. So it's a very, very large number of points and a high number of value from one card. And the synergy between these two is really, really nice. So I feel like if you're playing Nilfgaard, you know, Cahir and Morvran are a match made in heaven. So when it comes to Northern Realms, I don't think any of the leaders are a must craft instantly. Full testability is, you know, pretty strong. Choose a non-spying bronze unit on your side of the battlefield and duplicate it. So you duplicate a bronze card. And that is, you know, including all of its buffs. So if you have a really buffed bronze card, you know, that's going to duplicate that. And I think, honestly, full test is a pretty decent leader. Radovid, choose 3 adjacent units, lock all non-gold units among them, and remove 2 base strength from the locked units. This is kind of like a fancy Dimeritium Bomb. But why would you craft Radovid when you could just tech in Dimeritium Bomb if you feel like you need, you know, locking abilities, basically. So I don't think Radovid is really that great. And then Henselt, I like. Choose 7 adjacent units on your battlefield, convert all non-gold units among them to gold until removed from the battlefield or the round ends. So he has nice synergy with kind of making things gold, but he's only really worth crafting if you want to run a kind of gold conversion deck. You know, if you're going to run a gold conversion deck, then craft him. But it, you know, full test is just kind of fine otherwise. Whereas with monsters, you know, Dagon is just so much better than the other two. And similarly with Nilfgaard, Morvran is clearly the strongest leader. So in terms of these leaders, it's like craft them if you really want to play them. But I wouldn't say any of them are must crafts. With that said, when it comes to Northern Realms, there's a couple of resurrection cards that are definitely must crafts, and they happen to both be epics. So we have Shani, 2 strength, except that it's Northern Realms, so she's actually 4 strength because gold cards gain 2 from their faction ability. Resurrect a non-gold, non-permadeath unit and convert it to gold until removed from the battlefield. So you resurrect a unit, so a silver or a bronze unit that isn't permadeath, and you convert it to gold, so it gains 2 strength. But by converting it to gold, you also protect it from your opponent. And you can actually resurrect cards that they have maybe used their Dimeritium shackles on. So often, you know, you'll see an opponent use their shackles on Yennefer. Yennefer goes into the graveyard, and I'm like, well, this is fine. She's now a silver card. She's now a non-gold, non-permadeath unit. So then on the next round, we just resurrect Yennefer, turn her back into a gold card, and everybody has a good time. And by everybody, I mean you. So you can see just how much value Shani has. You know, it's a targeted resurrect. You know, you get to choose what you resurrect. So you can kind of refind or replay a lot of your silver cards or, you know, debuffed gold cards, or even bronze cards if it happens to be that, you know, you really fancy a bronze card for your strategy. She's just very versatile. She fits into any Northern Realms deck, and she's very, very strong. Now, following a similar vein, we have Nanaki. Nanaki is a 4 strength silver card. Shani was a 2 strength gold card, but ultimately in Northern Realms that's 4 strength. So here we have a 4 strength card that resurrects a non-gold, non-permadeath unit. The only difference in this situation is that she doesn't convert them to gold for the round. But you can see just how valuable Nanaki is, because Nanaki is just as almost just as valuable as Shani, and having both of them in a deck gives you draw consistency for targeted resurrects. And targeted resurrects are just really, really useful because you can replay silver cards, you can replay bronze cards, and often, as is in the case of the Northern Realms, the silver cards are pretty damn strong. For example, we have Priscilla. Priscilla is a 2 strength card, so she's not very strong, but that's good because often it means you can target draw her with King of Beggars if you're playing him. He's a legendary card that plays the weakest unit in your deck. You draw 1 non-gold card face up and 1 non-gold card face down. Play one and randomly place the other in your deck. So you get 1 card that you know, 1 card that you don't know, but ultimately you built the deck so you can have a guess of what it is, and you get to choose which one you want to play. So this is deck thinning, which we always talk about is really, really useful. Thinning your deck makes your deck more consistent. It's also a card that plays another card, which I always really, really like in Gwent. And you have a choice. Admittedly, going for the face down card is a risk if you have maybe something like a Scorch that could hurt you. But so long as you know your deck, you know kind of what that risk is. And the other thing with Priscilla is she's a good target for resurrections, such as with Nanaki, and she's a great target for Decoy, which is a legendary card you get for free at level 20, which allows you to replay a card on the board. So then you replay Priscilla, and you thin your deck even more. You draw another card. And this is why I think Priscilla is a really, really nice, again, must-craft Northern Realms card. Northern Realms has a lot of really, really good epic cards, by the way. And the last one I want to mention to you guys is Dandelion. Look at him there in all his bardy glory. He is a 5 strength card that is a massive pain in the butt if your opponent doesn't have removal. Add 2 strength to each non-gold unit played on your side. So every time you play a unit, it gets 2 strength until this guy is removed. And hey, look, he's a silver card, which means you can resurrect him with Shani or Nanaki. And I think you guys can kind of see how these cards would fit into any deck. And all 4 of the ones that I've shown you guys, they can just kind of slot into any deck and you can get really good value out of them. And I mean, even if they remove Dandelion, you've kind of baited out some of their removal, which means if you're playing, you know, trebuchets or towers or what have you, they can't then remove them. And even if they do remove him, you know, you've got Resurrects, you've got your Nanaki, you've got your Shani. You can always bring him back should you choose to do so. And that's why I think Dandelion is a really, really nice must-craft card within Northern Realms. So, when it comes to Scoia'tael leaders, I think you could ultimately craft either of the other 2. I actually think Bruvahug would be a better starting leader than Francesca. Francesca's ability, you can re-mulligan 3 cards, is kind of very situational. I have 1 deck currently that uses her. All of my other Scoia'tael decks use either Ithne or Bruvahug. But I would say Bruvahug, here he is in all his premium glory, is a really nice Scoia'tael leader because it basically gives you targeted draw of all of your silver cards. And often you can make decks that are situational around playing specific silver cards. But with Bruvahug, that's fine because, you know, you can target draw them. You're guaranteed that if you don't find them in the mulligan, you can find them with Bruvahug. The only downside with him is if you run out of silver cards in your deck, so you draw them all before you play Bruvahug, then, you know, his ability kind of becomes useless. So the one thing I would recommend is use his ability, you know, turn 1 or turn 2, depending on how your silver card draw is, to make sure that you do use him as opposed to drawing a silver card. But he is a nice leader, and you could potentially craft him. The alternative is Ithne. Ithne returns a non-relentless unit on your side to your hand, and then you immediately play it again. So it's kind of like Decoy, but it's a leader ability, which means you're always going to have it. So basically you can replay a card, which is, I think, a really nice ability. There's often lots of different situations where it's useful. Similarly to Bruvahug, you know, there's lots of situations where playing a silver card is useful. Ithne, there's lots of situations where replaying a card is useful. And it really depends on what kind of decks you want to run and which leader you kind of synergize with better. I think both Ithne and Bruvahug are good, strong Scoia'tael leaders. I think they're actually both better for newer players than Francesca is. Francesca's okay, and I say that as someone called Francesca. Francesca's okay, but I would recommend crafting either Ithne or Bruvahug, depending on what strategy you like to play. Personally, I would say go for Bruvahug, but, you know, there is an argument to be made for Ithne. So next up, we have everyone's least favorite, most favorite ambush card, and that is Tarrou Viola. And look at her freaking smile there as she stabs that corpse in the face. Like, oh, I would not want to meet her in a dark alley. But anyway, ambush. When the opposing player passes, add 2 strength to all non-gold units within 2 spaces. So if they're non-gold, that is 8 strength on top of her 6. So she's a 6 strength with the potential to be 14 strength. And the interesting thing is she's ambush. So, you know, the opponent doesn't necessarily know that that's the card that you've played. I mean, they can guess because you know what ambush cards there are. But I think that it's just, she's got a lot of potential. And often you can trick your opponent into passing. Sometimes you'll see your opponent passing, not thinking that you're going to reveal this extra strength, the 6 and then potentially the 8. And often people don't account for it. And as a result, she's a good way to kind of win the game, but also she fits again into any Scoia'tael deck. You're running, resilient dwarfs, you can drop her next to them, give them some power that they'll carry over to the next round. You're running maybe a Elven Merc kind of row stacking deck, that's fine, just chuck her down on the row, get the bonus 8 plus the 6, maybe keep some of those cards for the next round if you're running resilience. It's just a generally nice card, and I think it's one of the ones that if you're running Scoia'tael, it fits into a lot of decks. Similarly, if you're playing the Dragoons, I believe, the Vreehead Dragoons, they buff a card in your hand. So if you have Tarrou Viola in your hand, you can then use the Dragoons, which are a bronze card, to buff her. She gains 4 value for each time they're played. And at that point, it goes from a 6 strength to a 10 strength to a 14 strength to an 18 strength, depending on how many, times you buff her. And because she's an ambush card, she only appears when the opposing player passes. So the only way that your opponent can counter her is by putting weather on the row that she's played in. But if you have card advantage, then they can't do that because you just play her in a different row, because you can play her in any row. So you can kind of start to see just how versatile and how powerful Tarrou Viola can be. And there's no wonder she's got that terrifying smile there, because she's such a good card, and I definitely recommend you craft her. So Skellige is one of these factions where I wouldn't recommend crafting a specific leader, because each leader works in its own kind of deck. So you have Cracker and Crate, which is the starting leader, and he works really nicely in self-mutilating decks where you hurt your own cards and then double their value. That's basically kind of the gist of this. You spawn 2 9 strengths, they actually become 8, and then you can buff them up. That is kind of the strategy that the Cracker and Crate leader is used in. King Bran, discard up to 3 cards from your deck, shuffle your deck. So he's clearly used in discard strategies, which is another strategy that Skellige can use. So if you want to run discard decks, then you should craft King Bran. Then finally, we have our good friend Harold the Cripple. Remove 2 strength from all opposing non-gold units. So if you want to run a control or damage deck, then Harold the Cripple is the one to craft. You say you're running Axemen that get buffed every time you deal damage, then Harold is obviously a good pick. But it honestly depends on what sort of deck you want to craft. So I'm not going to recommend any specific one to craft, because I think they're all good within their own deck archetypes. With that said, I do have a couple recommendations for you, and this is very much along the same line as the Northern Realms recommendations in terms of resurrection strategies. Sigdrifer. Resurrect a non-gold, non-permadeath unit, gain 1 strength whenever a unit is played on your side from either graveyard. So whenever anyone resurrects something, Sigdrifer gains strength. She starts at 2 strength, but with Skellige ability, obviously that she gains strength each round. And again, you get to target resurrect a non-gold, non-permadeath unit. So you can resurrect silvers or bronzes. And it's just very useful because Skellige does have a lot of resurrection synergy. They also have Priestess of Freya in there. They have cards that gain buffs when you resurrect them. And again, it's a kind of targeted resurrect. So she's just a generally nice card to have in any Skellige deck. Similarly, we have Restore. Add 2 strength to the base strength of a non-gold, non-permadeath unit in your graveyard, then resurrect it. So this isn't a unit. This is a special card, which means that you just play it and you resurrect. Whereas at least with Sigdrifer, you can also decoy her, so you could actually use her to resurrect another card, should you wish to. But in both situations, you're resurrecting a non-gold, non-permadeath unit. This guy adds 2 strength to them, and she gains strength every time you kind of resurrect a thing. So that's the gist of these 2 cards. Finally, when it comes to Skellige, I really, really like Blue Boy Lugos. Blue Boy Lugos is a 6 strength silver card, which spawns a Spectral Whale on a random row on the opposite side. The Spectral Whale is a 3 strength spying card with weather immunity that moves to a random row on the same side at the start of your turn and removes 1 strength from all other non-gold units on that row. Banish when moved to the graveyard. So what it does is it bounces around randomly on the 3 rows on your opponent's side, and each time it moves a row each turn, it removes 1 strength from all units on that row. So if it goes to a row that's got like 5 units, then it'll remove 1 strength from all 5 of those, provided they're obviously not gold. When it moves to the middle row, if there's no units there, it does nothing. But basically, you can use this to kind of whittle away your opponent's health, and it's kind of a problem card that they then have to kind of remove. So you get the 6 strength from the card, but you often get a lot more strength because of the whale. The only thing that you need to be wary of is that the opponent can use decoy on the whale. So if they have decoy, the legendary card, which lets you replay a card, they cast it on the whale, they then pick up the whale and they'll play it on your side. So the whale can be thrown back towards you, but ultimately I think this forces your opponent to remove things, and if they can't remove it, then it's very problematic, and you get a lot more value than just the 6 that Lugos has. So that's more or less it, but I want to make a very quick mention to the draw cards, the drawing spine cards. We have a few of these in each faction. Sometimes they're blue, but sometimes they're purples. So for Skellige, we have Donar and Hinder. Gain weather immunity, draw a card, you may keep it or discard it and draw another. For the Nilfgaard, we have Cantarella. Gain weather immunity. Draw a card. You may keep it or put it at the bottom of your deck and draw another. When not spying, lose 6 base strength. So we have her. And then we also have the Yavin. Here he is. Purple. Gain weather immunity. Remove 1 strength from all other non-gold units on the row. Draw a card. So you can see these all have similar amounts of strength. They're all spying units. They all have weather immunity. And they all allow you to draw a card in some way or another. And I feel like these are quite useful cards to have in decks if you don't have any other way of gaining card advantage. So I just wanted to give them a quick mention, because if you need to gain card advantage, these spying units basically allow you to do that. And you just play them on a round that you intend to lose. You gain the card advantage, they win the round, and then you go on to the next round and you've got 1 more card than them, which is a very big deal in Gwent. So I just wanted to quickly mention these. If you feel like, you know, you're often a few cards short compared to your opponents, like they have 5 and you're running on 3, for example, then maybe think about teching one of these into your decks. That's about it from me. This has been the Epic Card Crafting Guide, and I have been Jaggerous. If you've liked this video, do hit that thumbs up button, guys, and let me know if you agree or disagree in the comments below. You know, maybe you really, really like Johnny, or, you know, you're really a good fan of Prize Winning Cow. To be honest, I quite like Prize Winning Cow as a starter card, but it's a starter card. You don't need to craft it. Beyond that, you can catch me live streaming Gwent Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at twitch.tv/Jaggerous. If you want to keep up to date with anything that I'm up to, do follow me on Twitter, and you can always subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, have a fantastic day, and hopefully I will catch you guys in the next video. Bye!